Today, we'll discuss a surprising record set by Islanders goalie Ilya Sorokin. That's even more impressive when you consider the team in front of him. We've got that, plus a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. I am so glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. And we're going to discuss a surprising record for Ilya Sorokin. We're going to go over something that motivates, perhaps, the New York Islanders, and we'll preview tonight's game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. But let's start with Ilya Sorokin. I know Sorokin takes a lot of criticism from some people. A lot of Islander fans have, I guess, what could only be described as a love-hate relationship with Sorokin. Some people love him and say, hey, if it wasn't for Ilya Sorokin, this Islander team would be bottom 5 in the NHL easily. He has made a huge difference for this team. And there are other people who think that Sorokin is a little too inconsistent and a little too just overrated, I guess, is the right way to put it for what some of these people feel. And, that is overall their assessment. And yet, I came across a record courtesy of Eric Hornick, who does stats for the Islanders television broadcasts, that kind of was surprising and I think speaks very highly of Ilya Sorokin and where he's at and what he means to this New York Islanders team. And you look at the numbers, Ilya Sorokin's statistics this year: 25 wins, 20 losses, 5 overtime losses. He has played in 50 games, and he's won half, and he's lost half. And, the goals against average, 2.73. That's not outstanding, but good. And the save percentage, 906. And again, I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, that save percentage is Vezina Trophy caliber, and yet it also kind of stands up. But here's the statistic that Eric Hornick released, and I think it's pretty impressive. Ilya Sorokin became the first goalie in Islanders franchise history to win at least 25 games in 4 straight seasons. Think about that. Chico Resch never did it. Billy Smith in the Hall of Fame never did it. The only 2 goalies who reached the 25 win mark in 3 straight seasons in Islanders history: Chico Resch, who did it from 76-77 through 78-79, and Rick DiPietro, who did it from 2005-2006 through 2007-2008. But eventually, Chico Resch split games with Billy Smith and then ended up being traded to the Colorado Rockies. Rick DiPietro, injuries, as we all know, derailed his career, wasn't really able to get the job done. And, I went back, I had to look and check out Billy Smith's career numbers. And remember, Billy Smith played on a team from 1974-75 through 1983-84. that reached at least the semifinals of the Stanley Cup playoffs, except for 1 year in 77, 78, or more every year. So the Islanders reached the semifinals in 75, 76, 77, 78. They lose in the quarterfinals. 79 semifinals. You win 4 straight cups from 80 to 83 and reach the cup final in 83, 84. These are, teams that won incredible amounts of hockey games. And yet, Billy Smith only won 25 or more games in a season twice in his 18-season career, 17 of those with the New York Islanders. And I'm not saying Billy Smith is not as good of a goalie than Ilya Sorokin. And, part of the reason that Billy Smith did not reach that milestone is he only started more than 45 games in a season with the Islanders twice in his career. 74, 75 when he started 58 games, and then 81, 82 when he started 46 games. And in 81, 82 is when he led the league with 32 wins, and that was his single season career high. But Ilya Sorokin, over the last 4 years, has won 26, 31, 25, and now 25 games in each of those seasons. And let's face it, in those years, the Islanders were not a particularly great team. You're talking about a team that missed the playoffs and then lost in the first round for the 2 years after that. And as of right now, according to Money Puck, the Islanders have a 15% chance of making the playoffs this year. So here he is. Now, the difference is obviously that Ilya Sorokin started in the 4 seasons in question, 52, 60, 55, and now 49 games. So he is seeing the ice a heck of a lot more than Billy Smith. But did Ilya Sorokin ever have a Mike Bossy on this team, or a Brian Trottier, or a Clark Gillies? No, he never came close. And, here's another number that I think has to be considered when you look at Ilya Sorokin. The Islanders have ranked in the bottom 10 in the league for high danger chances allowed in the last 3 years. That's this year, last year, and the year before. Here is Ilya Sorokin. And again, we go back to that that save percentage that is fairly pedestrian right now at, just 906. Not going to bowl you over. But here is a goalie who is facing a lot of shots and a lot of high danger chances and still manages to keep the Islanders afloat in spite of the fact that this team has the worst special teams in the league, dead last on the power play, next to last on the penalty kill. And out of 32 teams is ranked 28th in the league in goals scored. When you look at the numbers and you consider the team in front of him, Ilya Sorokin has to be given credit for keeping the Islanders in the playoff hunt, for the fact that the team actually made the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 seasons. And, we know the injuries he's played through at different times, last year especially, the back surgery during the offseason. But, next time you're critical of Ilya Sorokin, and I'm not saying he's the perfect goalie, okay? But what he's been able to accomplish with a very bad offensive and bad defensive team in front of him. Bad offensively because they don't score enough goals, and bad defensively because for 3 years in a row, they're letting in top 10 in the league or bottom 10 in the league in high danger chances. Without Ilya Sorokin, the Islanders are a lottery team. They may even be in the territory of the San Jose Sharks this year or the Chicago Blackhawks. No offense to those teams, but those are teams that have struggled in recent years and are in a full-scale rebuild. Now, how does this, reflect on the team that Lou Lamarello built? That's another discussion that we may get into in the future down the road. But as of right now, after reading this statistic and sort of breaking it down, I have more respect for Ilya Sorokin than I did before I found this out. And it just goes to show you how important Ilya Sorokin has been to this team over the last 3 years, especially. And again, he has been the undisputed starting goaltender for the New York Islanders for the last 4 seasons, including this year. Has not started less than 50 games in a season. Well, okay, he has 49 starts, 50 games right now. And believe me, barring injury, he's going to get past 55, maybe even 60. But wow. Ilya Sorokin to get 25 wins 4 years in a row in front of a team that has not won a playoff round in any of those years, that gives up that many high danger chances and does not score. It's an impressive number. And again, kudos to Ilya Sorokin for accomplishing that. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We're going to answer an email about the team's motivation. We'll preview tonight's game against the Penguins. And we have a New York native who played for both the Rangers and the Islanders as our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates you will have to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale my business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like watching basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sitting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. I just checked the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So I got an email, and this one is from Alan in New York City. And Alan, thank you for this email. Hi, Gil. What I thought you might have mentioned today, that being Monday of this week, but didn't, is the terrific energy with which the team is playing now came on the heels of Lou having said there will be changes during the summer. I think that most, if not all of the guys really like playing on the island. So maybe the thought that that might not continue is a motivator. I'm just saying, I always enjoy your show. First time writer, all the best. Alan from New York City. Alan, thank you for the email. I think you could look at it a few ways. I think you're right that statement by Lou Lamarello, which seems like it was influenced by the appearance of Scott Malkin in San Jose after the Four Nations tournament and after the trade deadline. That statement is probably true, that there is motivation for this team. And I think the departure of Brock Nelson, which was, right before that appearance by Scott Malkin and that statement by Lou Lamarello, I think that is also motivation for members of this team, especially some of the longer tenured guys who have become very comfortable, who realize what a great place Long Island is to live and to raise a family, especially if you're, a hockey player making 6 or 7 figures or even 8 when you add up endorsements and everything else. But here's the thing. And I can agree with what you say and also kind of flip it on its head a little bit. Yes, it is motivation that the guys want to stay together. They enjoy living here. They want to be a part of this team. The players who have been here a long time, know each other well, know each other's families, like each other, want to be teammates longer. Absolutely. But here's the other thing that I think has to be addressed. What is that statement by Lou Lamarello? Ultimately, it's a form of accountability. It is basically holding a fire under the feet, metaphorically, of these players and saying, you know what? If you don't play better, you may not be here next year or in the future. And everydayers will remember that I've talked about accountability on the show and how the Islanders don't always have enough of it, that the lack of depth on this roster prevents accountability from really taking place. Because, for example, not to pick on any particular player, I'll mention a few. Kyle McLean has struggled through large portions of this season. And here's a guy in 65 games with 3 goals and 8 points, and he's a -10. He's lost more faceoffs than he's won. He has less than 1 shot on goal per game. Did not play as well this year as he did last year. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen. Let's talk about Noah Dobson, who has been playing better lately, but still 7 goals, 28 points in 55 games, has been very bad in his own zone for long stretches of this season, hasn't produced offensively, turned the puck over far too often at times during this season. Can't bench these guys. Let's talk about Anthony Duclair, who has been struggling largely due to injuries, missed a lot of time. And because of the groin injury that most people believe he has suffered, and again, the NHL just says upper body, lower body. But let's say that, it's cost him his burst, and that burst is critical to his game and his style of play. You can't sit these guys because there's nobody there to come in and the only extra forward that the Islanders have on their lineup, on their roster right now, is Matt Martin, who has 1 assist in 24 games and just hasn't been playing up to his past standards. And Martin is a specific role player who, you know, if obviously if you have Anthony Duclair slumping, you're not putting Matt Martin into the game to fix it, you know, to take his place. Accountability. There are a lot of things that can motivate a team. What you mentioned, and mentioned very well, Alan, is fear. And yet, this team lacks that fear of being replaced more often than not. And I'm glad that Lou Lamarello alluded to possible changes this offseason. We want the changes to take place. This team, as everydayers have heard me say, needs to get younger, faster, and more skilled. But it shouldn't be a situation where the general manager has to say that. There should be competition from within. And anyone who has watched my weekly farm reports on the Bridgeport Islanders all year long, there aren't a lot of NHL-ready players in Bridgeport who are going to come in and put pressure on the guys who are on the roster now. When injuries hit the defense corps, first they went with Isaiah George. Isaiah George kind of hit that rookie wall. He played well for like 20 games and then kind of petered out. Lou Lamarello had to go out and trade for one player, sign another off waivers, and picked up a free agent who was just released from the KHL. Didn't go to Bridgeport. There are no forwards right now excelling at Bridgeport who are considered long-term options. Yeah, you could call up Liam Foudy or Brian Pinho and get a game or two out of them in an emergency, but those guys are not considered prospects. Those guys are not considered long-term solutions at the NHL level. And so there is a lack of urgency. It's human nature for a lot of people where if you know your job is secure, you don't have the same intensity level as if you know, hey, if I don't do this project right, or if I don't do this job well today, I may not have a job next week. That puts a whole different amount of urgency on the team. So, Alan, I think you're right. This team has played with more urgency since Lou Lamarello made that statement. And that's a good thing. I love seeing the urgency. The two games over the weekend against Edmonton and Florida, that's how this team should play almost every game. You want that effort. Effort is the one thing you can control, and you want that urgency. But it shouldn't take a statement like that. It should be built into the cake. It should be that you're on an NHL team and there is competition from within for those roster spots, for that spot on the top line, for that spot on the ice as opposed to being a black ace. And it's been a problem for the New York Islanders for not just this year, but a few years. But this year, I think it's been an even bigger problem. So, Alan, thank you so much. Great question, and greatly appreciate it. We have got more to get to on today's show. We're going to preview tonight's game in Pittsburgh against the Penguins, plus our Islanders birthday of the day. All that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So, tonight, 7 o'clock, Islanders, Penguins. And yes, this is a big game if the Islanders want to improve on that 15% chance they have to make the playoffs. Amazingly enough, if you look at the standings, Pittsburgh just 2 points behind the New York Islanders right now, although the Islanders do have 3 games in hand. Pittsburgh on a 4-game winning streak right now, and they are well rested. They last played on Saturday. So it's been a while for them. They have beaten some pretty good teams: Minnesota, Vegas, St. Louis, and the New Jersey Devils. So they're scoring a lot of goals, haven't scored fewer than 3 goals in any of those games. And maybe this is not the ideal time to be catching this Penguins team. We know the names at the top. Sidney Crosby, still their leading point getter, the only player that is above a point a game with 23 goals, 73 points in 67 games. Richard Rakell leads the team in goals with 31. This is a team that can put the puck in the net. They're in the middle of the league there, 16th, but next to last in the league in goals against, 31st. The power play is good, 8th in the league, 24.3% success rate. The PK, however, 20th, 77.2% success rate. The line combinations: Sidney Crosby, Richard Rakell, Brian Rust. That's a good top trio. Evgeni, Malkin centers, Danton Heinen, and Philip Tomasino on the second line. Blake Lizotti, Connor Dewar, and Noel Asciardi. That's the third line. And then Kevin Hayes, Bakani Imama, and Emil Benstrom. That's the fourth line. On defense, Chris Letang still on the top pair, along with a newcomer who's done very well, Vladislav Kolyachuk. Then it's Matt Grzelcyk and Erik Karlsson on the second pair, Ryan Graves and Connor Timmins on the third. The goalies, friend of the Islanders, Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic. We'll see who gets the nod in this game. For what it's worth, in their last game, it was Jarry, and he made 24 saves in 27 shots faced in a 7-3 win. Got to slow these guys down in the neutral zone. That's always important from an Islanders perspective, and we'll see whether or not the Islanders are able to do that and stay out of the penalty box. Do not allow a team with Letang and Karlstrom and Crosby to have more time and space. And one other thing from an Islanders perspective, Sidney Crosby always seems to kill the Islanders. They have got to find a way to slow him down. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and Sunday was the 63rd birthday of former Islanders winger Brian Mullen. Born in Hell's Kitchen in New York City, a 7th-round pick of the Jets back in 1980, spent 2 years at the University of Wisconsin, and made his NHL debut with Winnipeg in 82-83, joined the Rangers for the 87-88 season, and then played for the Sharks in 91-92 and closed out his NHL career with the Islanders during the Magic 92-93 season. Had 18 goals, 32 points in 81 games during the regular season, added 3 goals, 7 points in 18 playoff games as the Islanders reached the conference final that year in a magical run. One of his most memorable games as an Islander, how about April 20th, 1993? We talked about that Magic Stanley Cup run. Well, this is the game that started it. It's game 2 of the opening round series against the Capitals. Islanders down a game. Glenn Healy, the goalie for the Islanders, Rick Tabaracci, the goalie for Washington. And this back and forth game, it was tied by Dale Hunter in overtime with, in the third period with less than 3 seconds left on the clock. It went to overtime. It went to double overtime, but our Islanders' birthday of the day, Brian Mullen, scores in double overtime at the 14:50 mark. Ray Ferraro and Pat Flatley with the assists. The Islanders beat the Capitals 5-4 to tie the series. A big game. Glenn Healy, 41 saves to earn the dub. For Brian Mullen, he had a goal, 4 shots on goal. It was the overtime game winner, and it helped the Islanders eventually win this series and go on that run to the conference final. So Brian Mullen is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. And for your second listen, check out Locked On NHL, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage that you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. We will be back tomorrow, everydayers. Make sure you join us. We will have our key takeaways from tonight's game against the Penguins and our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders. So make sure you join us for that. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.